Enter, rejoice, and come in. Enter, rejoice, and come in. Today will be a joyful day. Enter, rejoice, and come in. Open your ears to the song. Open your ears to the song. Today will be a joyful day. Enter, rejoice, and come in. Open your hearts, everyone. Open your hearts, everyone. Today will be a joyful day. Enter, rejoice, and come in. Don't be afraid of some change. Don't be afraid of some change. Today will be a joyful day. Enter, rejoice, and come in. Enter, rejoice, and come in. Enter, rejoice, and come in. Today will be a joyful day. Enter, rejoice, and come in.
We have received in front of the pulpit and concerns whenever you are here in the sanctuary. For those of you at home, you can send your joys and concerns throughout the month to Church of Riverside, gmail.com. Our next joys and concerns will be on February 5th. Lunar Festival book sale will be held on January 28th and 29th. We are looking for volunteers to help set up on Friday, January 27th, both before and after the noon board meeting, and to help at the sale. Please see Kate or Linda to sign up. Our next event in our dinner series will be the Asian themed meal, an Asian themed meal. It'll be held on Saturday, January 21st at 5 p.m. in the Parish Hall. January 21st at 5 p.m. in the Parish Hall. Tickets, adults $25, children 12, ages 5 and under are free. The last day to purchase tickets is Thursday, January 19th. Please see Kate or Robert for tickets or buy them with PayPal. The Social and Environmental Justice Committee is continuing to collect contributions of food and hygiene products for those in need. Please place these items in the aqua collared bin in the Parish Hall. If you have any questions, please ask Adam or Grace. The UUCR Women's Federation Group is putting together a book group for the women in the church. However, all are invited. If you are interested, please let Pat Kawunder know when you would be available to coordinate a date. The first book under consideration is The Light We Carry by Michelle Obama. Come experience a sound bath at the Center for Spiritual Living today at noon. Kayla Castillo and UUCR friend Ray Owens will be facilitating this sensory meditation at the Riverside Center for Spiritual Living, located at 3891 Ridge Road, across from Fairmont Park. I'm sorry, but we're out of flyers at the membership table. So hopefully you got one early. The Social and Environmental Justice Committee. Adam would like to come up and speak to us for a moment.
Good morning. I've got a couple announcements. One is just because of the earlier announcement, the sound bath that's happening at noon at the Center for Spiritual Living, we are canceling this month's Social and Environmental Justice Committee meeting. But check your email this evening. We will be doing our business by email, planning our event for next month that we've been talking about. And then the other announcement, go ahead and go to the next slide, Alec. This Thursday, the city of Riverside is holding a public meeting to talk about parking downtown. You know, our church being downtown and not having a parking lot, I know we have a lot of concerns about parking and how much they're charging and when they're charging, all that kind of stuff. So everybody is invited. Please come out this Thursday, the 19th. It'll be at the new library. Come and, you know, just talk about your own experiences trying to park here for church and how that will be affected, especially if they try charging over the weekends and things like that.
Yes, it's the downstairs. The downstairs community.
Okay, cool. Downstairs.
If you have questions, you can talk to Adam after the service.
Yeah. But yeah, we just want to make sure our concerns are heard because that's a big issue here for this church. So thank you.
After the service, we are having a bake sale in the parish hall. Please see Diana Rowe to make your purchases. I'm sure there are a lot of enjoyable things out there that I know I would like to have. Okay, that concludes our announcements for today. And now I invite you to sit back and take a slow, deep breath as we move into the worship hour. You are welcome to read with me the mission statement of our church. Our mission is to foster a diverse religious community that celebrates life, affirms the individual, encourages spiritual growth and open thought, and works to advance social justice and environmental sustainability. Okay, we'll have an open mic at the end of the service for comments. Thank you very much. Our speaker today is UUCR member Alec Peck. Alec has been a practicing UU for 24 years, raised in a UU church, chosen by his father, raised a Quaker, and mother, raised Jewish, though both humanist in practice. Alec has studied natural science at Creighton University, a Jesuit institution, and is now completing his PhD at UC Riverside while serving as chair of the worship committee here at UUCR. Aesthetics and morals, making poetic principles. We generally think of our personal choices as being either aesthetic or moral choices. Do I wear blue or green today? Do I donate my dollar to the children's hospital or the homeless shelter? We think of the appeals to what is good morally and what is good artistically as being independent. A beautiful, elegant painting of a God you don't believe in or agree with, or an annoying eye-rolling commercial for your preferred political candidate. But sometimes we find that an ethical message can have a strong aesthetic implications. Sometimes things are beautiful because they have a good moral message. If morals can have aesthetic implications, it seems also that our aesthetic choices can have ethical consequences. If art has some obligation to have a moral message, then perhaps our ethics has some obligation to be artistically beautiful. If we believe in our spiritual message and believe that it should appeal to others, we have an obligation to deliver that message in an elegant and beautiful way. And now, a remembrance candles, occupied indigenous people. We have two lightings of sacred flames. The first is the occupied indigenous people's remembrance candle. The second is the lighting of our own chalice, the symbol of our faith. We walk upon the traditional territories of diverse and sovereign peoples, the original people of this land, who continue to cry out for justice and self-determination. This spot we occupy was first the sacred space of several groups of indigenous people, including the Kauia, the Kupeñao, and the Serrano. We, the Universalist Unitarian Church of Riverside, light the sacred flame as the stewards of the sacred and holy place. We are blessed with a space and opportunity to strive to live out our common principles, to bring justice, equality, and compassion into our daily lives, to resist all that threatens the earth and her people, and to be part of a world community with peace, liberty, and justice for all. And to be part, let these thoughts carry us forth as we journey and worship together. Our chalice lighting today has a reading. It is "We Are a People of Beauty" by Kimberly Ann Tunzik Carlson. Recognizing the beauty around us and within us, in voice and spirit, we gather to light our chalice. May we savor the beauty of our abundance and diversity, always cherishing one another and our earth. May we remember to inhale the lushness in life knowing that we are a people of beauty. Now, we have a tradition at UUCR to welcome those who are visitors or perhaps returning after some time away. We know it can be uncomfortable to stand up and speak in front of others. So I will now ask Tinka to volunteer to come up and tell us her name and how she found out about our church. We ask that you step close to the microphone and speak into it directly and clearly so everyone can hear. However, be aware that you will be visible on our Zoom camera and in the recording of this service, which is posted online. Please.
So my name is Tinka Friend, and I came to this church in 1996. And my husband and I came with another couple because there was a fundraiser here for hospice. And we came for that. And during, I saw the pamphlets that were out in front. And one pamphlet in particular caught my eye, and it was Views of a UU Feminist. And I had for 20 years not gone to any church because my feminist views were not welcome there. And so I was extremely excited and wanted to check this out and see if that actually could be. I attended for about 7 months before I decided that indeed it could. And then I joined this church.
Thank you. That's how it's done. Yes, if you are new, a visitor, or an old friend, please raise your hand to stand and come up to the mic in front of the pulpit.
My name is Richard Oler. My dad is an Air Force, he's passed away. He was an Air Force veteran, and I began school in went down in Moreno Valley when it was unincorporated. In Sunnymead Elementary, I went to first and second grade, and I returned after junior high and went all through high school up Moreno Valley High School. It was the only high school out there. Graduated, went to UCR and got a BS in chemistry. And I've worked a couple of jobs in my profession, and then I hit a rough spot. I had to go to prison a couple of times, and it kind of messed me up, but I recovered. And the first church I actually attended on a regular basis was Pure Rock in Beaumont. Pastor Mark Stamper. I don't know, I think they're looking into building a church. And the second one I started attending Oasis in Moreno Valley on Alessandro Boulevard. And for the last couple months, I've been attending the Congregational Church across the street because my parents were married in a Congregational Church in West Richfield, Ohio in 1953. And I left that because they really couldn't help me. And I'm attending here, but I intend to kind of maintain social ties with the church members over there. Because you guys have a very similar philosophy on the Trinity, right?
So I understand.
But I think you're a little stronger in the faith over here, right?
Okay, I'll take
A little
that.
less rich, a little more strong.
Thank you very much. Alex's father.
Good morning. My name is George Peck. This is my wife, Karen. We arrived here at 9 a.m. this morning, so we haven't been here very long. We are here to visit with our son in Riverside, first time in Riverside. We are from the Unitarian Universalist Church in Naperville, Illinois, as was kind of mentioned in Alec's bio. Did you want to add anything?
Yes, it's my great joy to be here and hear Alec, our son, doing the sermon today.
He's your son, right?
Yes. And thank you for welcoming us.
Anyone else who would like to step up to the microphone and introduce themselves? Anyone on Zoom? No one on Zoom? Okay. Thank you. For any other new guests, please join us for socializing and coffee hour after the service. We'd love to chat with you out in the parish hall, where you can also find our visitors book. Please leave your name before you leave so that we know you were here, and leave your contact information. If you want to know more about our upcoming events, you'll hear from us with those online contacts. Best way to get added to the mailing list is to email the church office at admin@uuchurchofriverside.org. Our hymn now is number 123, Spirit of Life, from the Gray Hymnal. Feel free to sing as the Spirit moves you, but please only with a mask on. Please stand in body and spirit and join us in singing Spirit of Life. This portion of our service is to support our beloved historical church. This can be accomplished in several ways. In addition to the weekly collection, you may send your checks to the church address, which is shown here. You may contribute by PayPal using the QR code, which is shown here, as well as on the church website and in our newsletter. Stater Brothers Market gives our church a rebate on Stater grocery cards, which we will have in church each Sunday. You get the full value, and the church also receives a percentage for free. Please see Diner Row to purchase your gift cards. Please donate as the Spirit moves you by whatever method works best for you. Thank you for your generosity, and to those who give of their time and their talent, thank you for your generous care and attention. Will our ushers now please come forward to receive the collection? Hymn number 402, from you I receive in the gray hymnal. Please feel free to sing as the Spirit moves you, but please only with a mask on. Please stand in body or spirit and join us in singing 402, from you I receive.
From you I receive, to you I give, together we share, from this we live. From you I receive, to you I give, together we share, from this we live. From you I receive.
Our meditation today is To Worship by Jacob Trapp. I invite you to join me in reading the bold italicized words. To worship is to stand in awe under a heaven of stars, before a flower, a leaf in the sunlight, or a grain of sand. To worship is to be silent, receptive, before a tree astir with the wind, or the passing shadow of a cloud. To worship is to work with dedication and skill. It is to pause from work and listen to a strain of music. To worship is to sing with the singing beauty of the earth. It is to listen through a storm to the small voice within. Worship is a loneliness seeking communion. It is a thirsty land crying out for rain. Worship is kindred fire within our hearts. It moves through deeds of kindness and acts of love. Worship is the mystery within us reaching out to the mystery beyond. It is an inarticulate silence yearning to speak. It is the window of the movement open to the sky of the eternal. Now let us pause for a moment of silence and reflection. Now I would like to introduce Alec Peck, speaking to us on aesthetics and morals, making poetic principles. Alec?
Thank you, Nick, for that introduction. I also lost my place. Thank you. So, some of our hymns have some really nice and poetic lyrics. Spirit of Life, the one we just heard, it's not too bad, but when you read it alone without the melody and the rhythm, I still think that it's just okay. Not something that really stands out as the UU hymn, as I've seen it described before, but frankly, most music is just bad poetry with a beat behind it. Although I do occasionally read real poetry as well. One of my favorite poets and writers is Edgar Allan Poe. I don't just like the words that he chooses or the vicarious feelings that I sympathize with his subjects. The meanings of the words tell their own story, but the subtle dance of the pacing and the rhythm scheme and the rhyme scheme itself tells its own story. The swinging and the swaying of the molten golden bells. There are twists and double meanings, ironies which draw upon your expectations and impressions of the world, which are not always meant to be taken literally. It's hard to say what makes a poem good, or even why I might personally like a particular poem. There's something about the phrasing and the cadence of the words that draws me in. And I often enjoy reading Poe's poems, but I don't often dwell too much on the actual story that the poem is trying to tell, or even the message that Poe is trying to give to me. His common themes often revolve around the evil and corruption in the world and in people. He romanticizes death several steps beyond just accepting it, surely in response to his constant exposure to it, and he pines for lost loves and paths not taken. In his stories, the supernatural comes from the dull, the painful, and the haunting aspects of life, not from the gentle and beautiful ones. I'm generally an optimistic person. I generally find the joy and value in most of my experiences and in my day-to-day life. And so Poe's view of the world, his messages about how we work, how it works and how we work inside of it, they don't really in itself resonate with me all that much. But of course, that's not really the job of a poet, is it? Their job is to make poetry, to write words in an aesthetic order, to appeal to me on some artistic level, to paint a beautiful painting, even if it depicts an ugly world. No, the job of the artist is one of aesthetic quality. And I like Poe's aesthetics, even if it's not always sometimes the moral message and the way that I like to think about the world. But can something still be aesthetically good, but still be outright morally bad? At some point, can those bad morals, those messages you can't quite agree with, taint the aesthetics? We've probably all laughed at a joke about a subject we feel shouldn't really be laughed at. Maybe we shouldn't be telling that joke in the first place, but that doesn't mean you didn't find it funny. An aesthetically good joke, if you might think, if you laughed at it after all. To an extreme, if we think about, for instance, some of the slick fashion choices that the Nazis made and the artistic techniques of the propaganda media that were quite influential even on documentaries today. But the historical context for that art is probably enough to distract most people from its other aesthetic qualities. On the other side of the coin, can something with a good message or something that's being done morally right still have artistic, beautiful value, even if it isn't actually all that very good? For instance, there's definitely a few hymns in our hymnal that I've passed by because even though the lyrics might be quite fitting for the sermon topic, even if it's at least and even if the lyrics are at least passable, maybe it'll have an awkward rhythm or it won't be a very easy melody to sing. When we're looking at an ugly painting, would it make you feel better if you knew that the artist used all eco-friendly materials? Probably not. You probably wouldn't find it more beautiful with that piece of information. But there can be something aesthetically beautiful. Can something be aesthetically beautiful or ugly simply because of its morals? And does that mean that if we want our art, or frankly, any of our work, because art is just form made with intention, if we want our work to be aesthetically appealing, do we have some obligation to imbue it with good morals? What a piece of art means and how one can know what a piece of art means is a hotly debated topic among many people. Perhaps certain colors have no inherent meaning beyond the subjectivity of humans observing them, but any graphic designer will tell you the importance of color and style in the choice of ads or logos because people will associate certain aesthetics with certain morals regardless. Aesthetics and moral choices generally at first glance appear to be separate. What makes something good aesthetically are generally not the same things as what makes something good morally. Arranging flowers is an aesthetic choice that we make. Hanging the principles on our wall is a moral choice that we make. But clearly these items are not completely independent. We've also hung a pride flag here. And this seems like a moral choice. We hang it for what it represents, not because we think necessarily that those colors are particularly beautiful, but we do like looking at it for those reasons. It does make us feel good. And isn't that on some level what beauty is? One simple definition of aesthetics is an explanation of what is right and what is wrong. Whereas aesthetics seems to be more of a judgment on what is beautiful, not on what ought to be. But both of these have something to do with what we personally like. They are moral and aesthetic judgments that appeal to our personal and subjective taste. What is it that makes something moral? What is it that makes something beautiful? If it's subjective, we need to understand the forces that influence our perspective. And if it's objective, we need to still explore to find what justifies the principles of good taste. And in either case, it is up to us to find that personal truth. Our gut, or at least my gut, is to say that something ethical should be beautiful. That is, at least in part, because it is ethical. But that in art, it seems like there should not be a right or a wrong. Ethics begets beauty, but beauty doesn't necessarily beget ethics. Might doesn't make right, as we know, but elegance also doesn't beget benevolence. At least that's the best I could come up with this morning. What you think ought to be, well, how we ought to behave as persons and as people might be our ethics, but what we want, what we really like, those really are our aesthetics. I mean, what is it that makes us like something in the first place? What is it that makes certain religious truths resonate within us? Is our innate and personal preference for horror versus drama movies really any different than our innate preference for paganism or Buddhism? I didn't choose to like sci-fi or Taoism any more than I could choose right now to stop liking them. We don't really control, not on that conscious level, what we like. It seems that for a good artist to make good art, there must be some kind of consideration for its moral implications. But naturally, I think this leads us to another question. When we make our moral choices, do we have also some obligation to be aesthetic? Perhaps it's not good enough just to do good things. Perhaps they also need to be done in an elegant and beautiful way. The stories that we revisit and make us think and sympathize are the ones that appeal to us on both levels, aesthetic and ethical. We won't reread a boring story, no matter how nice its moral might be. As with an argument, good logic, we think, is perhaps what should make an argument good, but an emotionally convincing argument is what really starts people in a certain direction. That's what the sociological data shows, that even if it is hardcore logic that ultimately perhaps convinces you of a position, it is that emotional argument that sort of gets your foot in the door. An appeal to something beautiful is what draws people in at first, and what convinces them to stay is something that is righteous. What makes something emotionally resonant, what makes us feel sympathetic, is it good ideas or is it good poetry? We could be perhaps biased towards a spirituality because it has produced a beautiful piece of art. But the ability to produce beautiful art does not necessarily mean that it comes from a beautiful morality or from a righteous person. Now, in a hierarchical religion, good poetry is good because it's divine, and so you can tell what is true by which poems are the best. You can tell which arguments are true by which arguments are most convincing to you, the one that sounds nicest on our ears. But what does it really mean to find something convincing? It's appealing to our taste. And the same essentially goes for my scientific work. If I can't communicate my ideas in an elegant way, write on my paper using convincing language, then it doesn't matter how accurate or good my results are. Now, our church here, we are not strictly in the business of saving souls, but we do have a message of love. It doesn't matter how loving and accepting we are if that is not expressed in beautiful language and art. Bad aesthetics can taint an otherwise good moral message. It's good to have a banner that says love is love, but that banner needs to be aesthetically pleasing to look at if we want people to believe that we mean it. We can put acceptance of each other and compassion in our daily lives on our walls all our want, but people will not stay here if their personal interactions with us are unpleasant, no matter how closely our values might align. The UUs that I've known don't go to church only out of a dedication to UUism. It's because we like each other, and having shared religious values is not an excuse to abandon our tactfulness. Appealing to logic and ethics may be more ideal pursuits than appealing to aesthetics, but if you want people to be passionate, you need to appeal to how they feel. Beauty, after all, is what makes people feel inspired. Jesus's aphorisms were so prophetic because they were witty and memorable. And if we want to be able to give our elevator speech on our doctrine of love, on what we really believe, that shows the same beauty that we've seen in UUism, we need to be able to package that in concise yet elegant ways. If we want people to believe in our covenant with conviction, then our more moral choices must also be aesthetic ones. And I think there are some poetic lines that are hidden among our principles and sources, the idolatries of the mind and spirit, the transformative power of love, the inherent worth and dignity of people. But poetry is not just about choosing the most expressive words. Poetry is about form, and it's about the relationship between ideas. And I don't like the way that our principles place the burden of action on the two verbs, affirm and promote, which we put before each of the individual principles are listed. As a scientist, I like actionable items. Yours and my inherent worth itself is not what makes us good persons. It is the respect of inherent worth, which makes us righteous. It is not the abstract idea of democracy, which we must believe in. We have to go out and vote. The seventh principle speaks of the interconnected web, but even the principles themselves work as an interconnected web. Being made by us humans, they are not perfect. Perhaps their concepts overlap a bit, but together they function as their own interconnected system. And when we list our principles, they often come out as a numbered list, as we've done here on our wall. But I think that disguises their true structure. Sometimes I've seen the principles listed as an arch, where principles 1 and 7, speaking about our inherent worth of individual people and the interconnected web of nature, which seem to be contrasting points, then meet together at principle number 4, which is the search for truth. It's freedom, which makes those ideas reconcilable. But I think in a way it's also principle number 5, the use of democracy, which allows us to reconcile each of the many separate paths that we each walk. The second principle speaks of equity, and the principles themselves have a balance and equity in their structure. The right of conscience is balanced against self-reflection and the shortcomings within ourselves. The second principle requires us to use compassion in our human relations on an individual level, but also the fifth principle requires us, and the sixth aims for the goal of world community between all of us and each other. And even within individual principles, the third principle paradoxically requires both acceptance of each other, but also challenged spiritual growth. How can you challenge each other to become better people if you accept us exactly as we are? The fifth principle, again, pairs the right of conscience and the application of democracy, requiring that we respect the rights of the minority and the inherent things that we believe, which we cannot ever really prove. And the second principle demands that balance between justice and compassion, where justice occurs when we can no longer forgive people. Jesus said, of course, that forgiveness is the ultimate act of compassion. And yet, when we bring people to justice, we cannot forgive them. These paradoxical dualities are the hallmark of all religions, that God is both the whole sum of all things, but also the spark within you which only your soul can access. This list invites us to say unpoetic things like the third principle instead of something like the principle of growth. We could be saying the principle of worth, which is the respect for the inherent worth and dignity of every person, or the principle of truth, that we must search for the religious truth that we, in all of the world's religions, and that it is a free and open search for that religious truth. Every written word is art. It is a form which we generate by our intentions. Everything we say is an aesthetic choice, and every motion is a dance. The ethics of compassion, justice, and conscience will fall flat without the aesthetics of love and beauty. Thank you.
Thank you, Alec. Our closing hymn, number 311, Let It Be a Dance, from the Gray Hymnal. Feel free to sing as the Spirit moves you, but please only with a mask on. Please stand in body or spirit and join us in singing 311, Let It Be a Dance.
body turn and spin. Let your body learn to bend and like a willow with the wind. Let it be a dance, let it be a dance, let it be a dance. A child is born, the old must die. A time for joy, a time to cry. Take it as it passes by. Let it be a dance. Let it be a dance we do. May I have this dance with you. Through the good times and the bad times too. Let it be a dance. Morning star comes out at night. Without the dark there is no light. If nothing's wrong, then nothing's right. Let it be a dance. Let it be a dance. Let it be a dance. Let the sunshine, let it rain. Share the laughter, bear the pain. And round we go again. Let it be a dance. Let it be a dance. Let it be a dance.
Thank you, Tinka, for the signing, and Alec for the singing, and all those who joined in. For benediction, may we hear the melody of life and find ourselves singing harmony. May we be open to the dissonance in the song of the land and its people, that we may be part of the world's urging toward justice, peace, and love. May we feel in our bones the rhythms of life and the land and find ourselves dancing. Namaste, amen, and blessed be. Thank you, Alec, for sharing your valuable time and insights with us this morning. It is sincerely appreciated, and we look forward to seeing you again. For those of you who would like to stay in the sanctuary for 10 to 15 minutes for questions or to share some discussion or observations from the service, please remain in the sanctuary or online. Please be aware that these comments will be posted online. For the rest of you, you are now welcome to adjourn to the parish hall. Is there anyone who would like to share anything with us? You can step to the microphone up here and share with us. Please state your name.
Tinka Friend. And Alec, I was really, how do I put this? With the recent UUA looking at our, going through and looking at our principles and deciding whether or not they need to be changed, or if so, how should they be amended? And, we've had conversations back and forth and everything. I really thought that this was very timely, very applicable to what we members and representatives of our churches are doing right now in looking at our faith and looking at perhaps, I hadn't thought of it that way, but I really appreciate you bringing that forward, looking that what we put out there, look at the blending of both the moral and the aesthetic. And again, when I was kind of talking to you email-wise, one of the things that I do like about our existing principles is, now I see, is the aesthetic quality that I see within them. As opposed to just simply 7 words or a list of 7 moral things. So thank you for taking this and taking the time to look into it and kind of analyze it and sharing it back. Thank you.
Thank you, Tinka. Oh, yeah, come on.
As I said, my name is Richard Oler, and I intend on being a resident of Moreno Valley, but I would like to attend this church. And your sermon was very artistically uplifting, but it was more like a lecture in humanism. I'd like to see future sermons more faith-based on the Word of God. And maybe we can eventually get together and have social functions with the Congregational Church across the street and maybe become like a brother church. You know how you have denominations form in Protestant, not like the Catholics have one church, but you know how they form a group. Maybe this could be the start of a group. They could be considered our brother group in the way we approach the Trinity. And I'd like to be have some kind of position in this church where I have time to contribute to help make decisions about the direction it should go. That's what I like to do. Oh, I'm missing you too. Thank you.
Thank you. Grace, Tinka, so I was definitely thinking about the UUA's Article 2 draft while I was writing this in part. But I had actually been watching somebody's, I guess, lecture about, they were talking about this idea of the relationship between aesthetics and ethics, but from the artistic perspective, saying that if you believe that this connection exists, then that means that there are art sins, that you can be wrong as an artist, and that's more what they were talking about. But yeah, it definitely made me think about how that is a two-way bridge, and that we need to think about how and I thought sort of before I when, because this happens every 15 years, so I was fairly young the last time they were doing this review process, and so when this came about, it made me realize that for a while I've been thinking that it was sort of subversive of me to think that the principles should be rephrased so that the strong action verbs are at the beginning of the 7 principles, rather than putting all that action weight on those 2 at the beginning. But of course, and now I'm realizing that that's not really subversive at all. In fact, the whole, it's right there in the phrase living tradition, but the whole point is that we don't believe that there's anything sacred necessarily about these 7 principles and the way that they've been written, that we are still actively searching for what the principles of moral action are. And I love, thank Richard. I love the idea of interfaith activity and being able to work with other churches. Yeah, thank you. And then Grace has a comment.
There were something I was going to say, and I realized I had forgotten to say. And that is, well, we sit on the worship committee together, and I felt like it was what you had to say was very precise as to what we are striving for when we present services, and that is that not just the moral or intellectual, but that there's this aesthetic quality that we bring to it, that we are able to reach the emotions of the people. And it's not always easy every time when you come up here and put a service together, but I see that as kind of an overarching goal that we have from the worship committee when we do put services together.
Yeah, and I also would like to see a good moral, aesthetically pleasing statement about how we ought to behave. Yeah, Grace, sorry for cutting you off.
I really enjoyed that sermon, Alec. Thank you so much. I have a special affinity for literature and poetry and words, so it kind of resonated with me a lot. So the first thing I'd like to say is I've pondered a lot of thoughts about moral versus aesthetics. And right now I'm rereading a novel that for the second time that I really enjoyed the first time. But the thing is, all the characters in the novel are very unlikable characters. And I keep wondering why I keep coming back to this book, because all these characters are like so just not likable. But then I realize it's because the way it's written is so clear and so skillful that despite these characters, I just read the book just for the aesthetics of it. So that being said, two questions came up in my mind during the sermon. And one is aesthetics, I think, no, actually, aesthetics is subjective, I believe, right? Relatively subjective. But are morals subjective?
Yeah, thank you, Grace. Yeah, and yeah, I mean, to start where you finished off. Yeah, I think the subjectivity of what makes art good is something that art critics will also debate you about. There is a large school of thought that says that there are objective artistic sort of principles that you can aspire to, and if you and so, for instance, you can say that that perhaps that plot is inconsistent. That if it's a story, maybe their characters' motivations aren't consistent from one chapter to the next. Maybe there's a Deus ex machina where the day is saved at the end by complete random happenstance, and it's not and it wasn't motivated by any of the characters. Now, all of those things I just said are objective qualities, whether or not something is a Deus ex machina, whether or not they're characterized consistently, but whether or not that makes it something good or bad, that is, if it seems to be, in your opinion, that's still a subjective idea, whether or not those are the things that make a piece of literature good or bad. And I think that there are some merits to both sides of that coin. I think there are some things which you can point and say that these are objectively things that aesthetically are incongruous, that don't make sense. But it is largely subjective. And I think that question of where do the principles of good morals, where do the principles of good aesthetics come from? Are they handed down objectively by God, or do they somehow just emerge from our subjective experience of the universe, or from our subjective experience of God? Ultimately, it doesn't really matter whether it's objective or subjective, because as I think it's Plato, maybe it was Socrates, one of them has a dialectic method with a character named Euthyphro, who is going through a spiritual conundrum, coming to realize that even if Euthyphro, even though he believes in objective gods, the Greek gods, who objectively say, oh, this is what is good and this is what is bad, he still is no better off than the subjectivists who don't think that there is an objective God, because Euthyphro has no way of knowing sort of what the gods want of him. It's still up to us to sort of figure out, well, what the gods want. And because if the gods had some reason for making certain things beautiful or making certain things righteous, then if they had a reason to do that, then there must be some even greater principle, some greater logic that even the gods are bound to. Or if there is no reason, then your only hope is to go and find God and ask them, find the gods and ask them what is the good stuff. And so ultimately it doesn't make a difference in terms of how we have to search for truth, aesthetic or ethical truth. Yes, Pat has, and then.
Hello?
Hello, we can hear you now.
Oh, good, thank you. Yeah, I just wanted to respond to what Grace said about morals being subjective. I think some morals are absolute, like murder's wrong. But a whole lot of moral issues are, I think, I'm not sure the word is subjective, but I think it's complicated, like lying. Lying sometimes is really the right thing to do. Although, you know, I just think it's really complicated. And I really appreciate you for the subtlety and the nuances that are allowed rather than absolute. I think that's really a positive thing about the UU faith. I also want to say, because I'm the president of the church, I'm not there today because I'm recovering from COVID, is why I'm on Zoom. It's a slow process. I want to tell your parents, Alec, what a joy you are to us and what a gift to our church. I'm so glad they got to be here today to hear you speak. Thanks, that's all I wanted to say.
Thank you so much, Pat. We've got one comment here in the sanctuary first, and then Linda's iPad will be next after this one comment. Thank you.
Thank you for this. I've been reading about philosophy and poetry.
Dangerous.
Big place, you know, the people have philosophy who want to do things and have everything right and going. The poets want to be messy. You know, they know what the world is about. And, you know, it's like politicians, and then the revolution out on January 6th is poetry, even though we don't like it. But especially poetry doesn't go too much for morality or anything like that. It's something different. If you know what things are, it's fine. If you know what things you want to have, then, you know, that's what Plato and what they did to our civilization right here. We follow that, but we still have those poets.
Yes, thank you. Yes, indeed, philosophers sort of have philosophy is a lot about the power of definition. And sort of the approach in philosophy is that if we want to prove or justify that ethics exists or that aesthetics exists, you sort of have to prove that those concepts are separate. Ethics are sort of defined by what is not ethics, just as, you know, if you're able to contrast what is an ethical choice and what is an aesthetic choice, that is sort of one way of giving those ideas meaning, is by contrasting them. But clearly it is not so simple. It is messier than that. We had one comment on Zoom, and then I think we've got another one in the back. Two more comments, and then I think we'll be close to time. From Lee, great, and then at the back.
Yes, thanks, Alec. I wish I could be there today. My younger one is not feeling his best at the moment. So, but he's better now. It's sort of a stomach bug going around. Just a quick added note on Euthyphro's dialogue in Plato's dialogues with Socrates. Even though Euthyphro frames it as the issue of piety, the issue is really justice and morals underneath, as to whether the gods, what they command or desire or decide, whether it is good because they are gods, or because there is a standard of morality outside and above, to which even the gods must submit. And of course, Socrates brings that home to the young Euthyphro, because Socrates himself is on trial for impiety, speaking against the gods, for skepticism and questioning the gods. And so he says he's on trial, and Euthyphro is sure that he's right in prosecuting his father for mistreating a slave. And so Socrates says, well, since you're sure, you should be able to give me some clues to help me in my own trial, in my defense at trial coming up. And he goes and shows that Euthyphro tries to define piety repeatedly and unsuccessfully, and he can't understand, he misses the moral point. Okay, and so Socrates in the end, in aporia, leaves it hanging. That means leaves it with the readers and the hearers. Says, are you not compelled to think that all that is pious is just? Which is exactly the problem that we have with the world religions, the dominant religions of today, is they have often confused their cultural their cultural and ethical taboos for actual moral principles, and therefore have often lost sight of moral principles. So Euthyphro's dialogue is very much to the point of our dilemma today, I think.
Thank you, Lee. Yes. To paraphrase in more modern language, I've heard that it's Socrates is asking Euthyphro, okay, so you say that you know that prosecuting your own father is for this crime is a righteous act, but how do you know that it's really righteous? How do you really?
Exactly. And yes,
to decide.
Exactly. Now, of course, neither one of them, knew anything about what we know today with evolutionary psychology and reciprocity and all of those things. But they did. But Socrates did realize that morality has to stand outside and above the various cultic services of whatever gods are under discussion.
Thank you, Lee. And we had one final comment to finish us off. Okay. In that case, Nick has our final comment to finish off our discussion.
I want to thank Alec for a very good sermon, especially with our lay-led leadership here and bringing us a lay sermon that's really, really good and clear. And thank you for that. And I appreciate it. I think when we talk about aesthetics and morals, you get into, for me, I look at things as what I feel my higher power would want me to do in a situation or say or write. And I think that these principles of ours do have the sense of the Holy Spirit in them. And even though it's an ongoing living document, that doesn't decrease its spirit. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Nick. And thank you all for being here. Let's have some snacks in the parish hall.